He taught an old man how to use a smartphone, but what the man wanted to search for. The boy thought it was just a boring afternoon favor for a neighbor. But the old man's trembling fingers on the screen held a secret that would change both their lives forever. The day Noah met Mr. Eldridge, he was thinking about quitting his volunteer work. The sun beat down hard on the assisted living center's courtyard, and his phone buzzed with texts from his friends planning a beach weekend. He was 17, restless, and only here to pad his college applications. Helping old folks set up email accounts or figure out where the volume button was on their phones wasn't exactly what he called meaningful work. But when the nurse pointed him to a man sitting alone under the birch tree, saying, "He's been asking for help with his smartphone all week, but no one's had the time," Noah sighed and walked over. Mr. Eldridge looked like something out of a black and white movie. His face was weathered, more lined than any Noah had ever seen. His white shirt was buttoned to the top, even in the heat, and a brown felt hat shaded his eyes. His hands, though, those were the first thing Noah noticed. They trembled ever so slightly, but they cradled the phone with an odd kind of reverence. "Hi, I'm Noah," he offered, standing awkwardly. The old man looked up slowly, and his lips curled into a gentle smile. "Harold Eldridge," he said, his voice smooth but faded, like an old radio broadcast. "They told me you might help me understand this thing." He lifted the phone a few inches like it weighed more than it should. Noah sat. "Sure. Android or iPhone?" "Android, I believe," Harold replied. Then, with a small chuckle, "Though to me, it's more like a tiny, mysterious box." Noah grinned despite himself. "Well, let's open the box." It started like all the other sessions. He showed Harold how to swipe, how to tap, how to close apps. The old man was a quick learner, surprisingly so, asking clear, focused questions. But something about the way he stared at the screen, it wasn't just curiosity. Noah tried to keep it light. "Trying to get on TikTok?" Harold shook his head. "No, I want to search for someone." That wasn't unusual either. Many of the residents wanted to find long-lost friends or family. Noah nodded. "What's their name?" Harold hesitated, his eyes drifting to the sky like he needed to borrow memory from the clouds. "Rebecca Langston. She would be 81 now, if she's alive." Noah's fingers paused over the keyboard. "And who is she?" The old man's expression didn't change, but his voice thinned. "She was the girl I was supposed to marry." The courtyard quieted. A breeze rustled the birch leaves, and somewhere a bird trilled. "Supposed to?" Noah asked softly. Harold leaned back, the phone dimming in his lap. "There was a war, son, and a letter I never sent." Noah said nothing, but something inside him shifted. He'd helped people search for lost classmates, children they hadn't seen in decades. But this was different. "What happened?" "I met her in the spring of '61. She wore yellow like the sun had chosen her. We were going to run away together. But then the draft came. Vietnam. I swore I'd come back to her." He looked down at his trembling hands. "But I was scared. Scared of dying. Scared of holding her heart while I walked into something I didn't understand. So I left a letter instead of facing her." He drew a long breath. "I never knew if she read it. I never knew if she waited." Noah swallowed. "You haven't seen her since?" "Not once. And now you want to find her?" "I just want to know if she's okay. If she had a good life. If she smiled again." The air between them felt thick with history. Noah nodded. "Okay. Let's see what we can find." He showed Harold how to open Google. They started with the name. "Rebecca Langston, born around 1944? March 3rd, Harold confirmed. "Born in Indiana. We grew up in the same town." They tried social media first. Unsurprisingly, no hits. Then came local news obituaries, archives, alumni listings. For the first hour, it was dead ends and quiet hope. But then Noah hit something. Langston, Rebecca. Former teacher. Retired. Lives in Bloomington, Indiana. Harold sat forward, his entire body leaning toward the screen like it might breathe her name. Noah clicked the link. It was an old article, 10 years back. She'd taught English for 30 years. Won a few awards. A widow, it said. "Want to see if she's still in Bloomington?" Noah asked. Harold nodded, barely audible. "Please." They found a listing. An address. Noah looked up. "Do you want me to help you write a letter?" Harold didn't speak right away. His eyes were wet. When he blinked, a single tear slid silently down his cheek. "I want to call," he said finally. "You sure?" Harold took a deep breath. "I've waited long enough." Noah handed him the phone. "Do you want me to dial?" He nodded. Noah tapped the number. then handed it over. Harold raised the phone slowly to his ear. His fingers were shaking. The line rang once, twice, 3 times. Noah held his breath. Then click. Hello. A woman's voice. Soft. Older. But clear. Harold didn't speak. The voice again. Hello. Then, barely above a whisper, Rebecca? A pause. Then, sharp intake of breath. Harold? Noah watched something ancient and breaking bloom in the old man's face. A sob caught in his throat, but he steadied it. It's me. Another silence. Then, my God, she whispered. You're alive. Noah stood, backing away slightly, giving them space. He didn't need to hear the rest. Whatever this was, it wasn't his moment. But as he stepped back, Harold looked at him. Their eyes met. And in that one look, there was gratitude deeper than words. He had come here thinking old people were relics of the past. Now he realized they were walking novels. And some still had chapters left to write. Harold didn't sleep that night. He lay in his narrow bed at Willow Ridge Assisted Living, staring at the ceiling fan slowly turning above him, the phone still beside his pillow, like some fragile relic. The call with Rebecca had lasted only 5 minutes. 5 minutes after 63 years. She'd cried. Quietly, not dramatically, but he heard his catching of breath, the trembling pauses. And he cried too, though he tried not to let her hear. She hadn't married again after her husband died, she said. 2 sons, both grown, both living far away. She still walked every morning when her knees let her. She read poetry in the evenings. Her favorite was still Frost. And when he said, I never stopped thinking about you, she had whispered back. I never stopped hoping you might call. Now the words replayed in his head like echoes in a canyon. Over and over. He hadn't told anyone what he planned to do next. Not even Noah. But he had already made up his mind. The next morning, he asked the center's director for a meeting. He wanted to travel. Yes, he knew the risks. Yes, he had a heart condition. But Noah wasn't asking for permission. He was 84. The only thing that scared him now was regret. They argued a little, then relented. His health had been stable for months. His records were in order. If he had someone to accompany him. Harold made one call. It rang twice. Noah here. It's Harold. I need a favor. They were on the road 3 days later. Noah's parents weren't thrilled at first. But when he told them about Harold's search, about the call, and the promise left hanging for over 6 decades, his mom got teary and offered to pack sandwiches for the drive. They took Noah's rusted Toyota Corolla. Harold insisted on paying for gas. Consider it your tip for changing my life, he joked, and Noah had no answer to that. It was a 9-hour drive from St. Louis to Bloomington. They listened to jazz, Harold's favorite, and stopped every 2 hours so Harold could stretch his legs and breathe. Along the way, Harold told stories. About his childhood. About how he once ran across the tops of boxcars on a dare. About the night he and Rebecca had carved their initials into the willow tree behind the old mill. About the day he got drafted and she wore a yellow ribbon in her hair and tried not to cry. I was a coward, Harold said. Not because I went to war, but because I couldn't face her with my fear. I thought letting go would protect her. Noah kept his eyes on the road, but he heard the weight behind the words. I think, he said finally, you thought you were doing the right thing. That doesn't make you a coward. That makes you human. Harold looked out the window for a long time after that. They arrived just after sunset. Rebecca lived in a small brick house with ivy climbing the sides. A white porch swing creaked gently in the wind. There were fresh flowers on the windowsill. Noah parked down the street. You ready? He asked. Harold didn't answer. He stared at the house like it might vanish if he blinked. She said to come? Noah pressed gently. She said, come if you mean it. And do you? Harold smiled slowly. More than I ever have. He stepped out of the car, his legs stiff from the ride. Noah offered an arm, and Harold took it without pride or shame. Just gratitude. The porch light turned on before they reached the steps. And there she was. Rebecca. She wore a light blue sweater and gray slacks, her silver hair pulled back in a braid. She looked older, yes, but unmistakably her. Harold stopped at the bottom step. She looked at him for a long time. Then she said, You came. And Harold, with tears in his eyes, said, I finally did. She reached out her hand. He climbed the step and took it. Their fingers trembled together. Noah waited in the car for almost 2 hours. He didn't mind. He watched the stars come out, one by one. Thought about how he'd almost quit the center. about how helping Harold had started as an obligation and turned into something far more profound. Then Harold knocked on the window. "You should come in," he said. Inside, Rebecca's home was warm and quiet. Photos lined the mantel, two boys in graduation robes, a wedding picture, a much younger Rebecca in front of a classroom. The smell of cinnamon tea filled the air. They sat in the living room, the three of them. Harold and Rebecca side by side on the couch, Noah across from them in a worn armchair. Rebecca spoke first. "I'm glad he found you," she said to Noah. "He needed someone brave enough to listen." Noah smiled. "He did most of the brave stuff himself." She looked at Harold. "I still have your letter." He stared. She nodded. "I found it under the porch swing the morning you left. I read it 100 times. Then I buried it in a shoebox and tried to move on." "I thought it was best," Harold said softly. "I didn't want to leave you with hope I couldn't keep." Rebecca touched his hand. "And yet here you are." They sat in silence for a while. Then Rebecca said, "I don't know what happens now, but I think we deserve a few more chapters, don't you?" Harold nodded, eyes misty. Yes, we do." That night, Noah slept on the couch. In the morning, Rebecca made eggs and toast, humming as she moved about the kitchen. Harold sat at the table, watching her like someone trying to memorize a dream. Noah sipped coffee and tried not to smile too much. Later that morning, Rebecca asked Harold to walk with her to the willow tree behind the old mill. It was still there, aged and bowed, but alive. They found the initials, faint but visible. R+H. Harold ran his fingers over the carving. Rebecca whispered, "Time tried to erase us, but not everything fades." They stood there for a long time, hand in hand. Noah watched from a distance, his heart full. 3 weeks later, Noah received a letter in the mail. Real paper, neatly folded. No return address. Inside was a photo, Harold and Rebecca sitting on that same porch swing, side by side, smiling. Beneath it was a note, written in Harold's careful handwriting. "Dear Noah, you thought you were teaching an old man how to use a phone, but what you really gave me was the courage to find her, to speak the words I buried for a lifetime, to believe that sometimes, even after a long pause, life picks up the story again. You helped me find my ending, or maybe my new beginning. Forever grateful. Harold." Noah held the letter for a long time, and when he looked up, everything around him seemed a little brighter, a little softer. He realized that sometimes, the most ordinary acts, pressing a button, making a call, could be the start of something extraordinary. And sometimes, the greatest stories were not written in books. They lived in people. Noah folded the letter gently and tucked it into the back of his journal. He didn't know why, but it felt right to keep it close. Something in Harold's words made the world feel a little more meaningful, as if maybe life wasn't just about where you were going but also about who you helped along the way. At school, things changed. Not dramatically, not loudly, but Noah found himself paying more attention. When a substitute teacher paused during roll call, clearly flustered, Noah stood up and helped her get the projector working without being asked. When the kid who always ate lunch alone sat 2 tables over, Noah joined him. He didn't say much, just sat there. But the boy smiled, and Noah felt like maybe it mattered. One afternoon, a girl in his class named Harper, who usually kept her headphones on and her head down, looked over at him in the hallway. "You seem different lately," she said. Noah shrugged. "Maybe I'm just listening more." Harper raised an eyebrow. "To what?" "To stories," he said, then smiled. "Even the quiet ones." A month later, Noah drove back to Bloomington on a rainy Saturday. Harold had called him the night before. His voice sounded thinner but peaceful. "I'd like to see you again if you've got the time," he'd said. "There's something I want to give you." Rebecca opened the door when he arrived. Her eyes looked tired, but warm. "He's not well," she said. "The doctors say it's time." Noah swallowed. "Does he know?" She nodded. "And he's ready." Noah stepped inside. Harold lay on a recliner by the window, a blanket over his legs, a book open on his lap. When he saw Noah, he smiled. His face was paler, the skin like parchment now, but the light in his eyes was still there. "Noah," he said softly, "you made it." "Wouldn't be anywhere else," Noah replied, kneeling beside him. Harold nodded toward the book in his lap. "Rebecca's been reading me Frost." You know what he said? "In 3 words, I can sum up everything I've learned about life." Noah smiled faintly. "Let me guess. It goes on." Harold chuckled, coughing lightly. "Smart kid." They sat quietly for a moment. Rain tapped gently on the windows. Then Harold reached to the side table and picked up a small wooden box. This, he said, was my father's. He kept letters in it. Then I kept mine. He opened the lid. Inside were only two things: an old photograph faded, folded at the corner of a young Harold and Rebecca under the willow tree, and a small slip of paper. Harold handed it to Noah. Noah unfolded it. It was the original letter, the one Harold had left all those years ago. The ink had faded, but the words still lived. I want you to have it, Harold said. Noah looked up. Me. I think you understand what it means to carry someone's story. You didn't just help me find Rebecca. You helped me find myself again. And maybe you'll help someone else do the same someday. Noah's throat tightened. Thank you. Harold closed his eyes, a soft breath leaving him. Promise me something. Anything. When you get older, don't let fear make your choices for you. It's okay to be scared. Just don't let it keep you silent. I promise, Noah whispered. Harold nodded once, slowly. Good. Rebecca came and stood behind Noah, resting a hand on his shoulder. He'll sleep for a while now, she said gently. You can stay if you like. Noah did. He stayed through the rain and into the quiet of the evening, sitting beside the man who had once been just another old face in a courtyard. And now is something far more. Harold passed away 2 nights later. Peacefully, in his sleep, with Rebecca holding his hand and the window open beside the bed so the wind could carry him somewhere gentle. Noah drove back for the funeral. It was a small service. Just family, a few neighbors, and the director from the assisted living center who cried softly into a handkerchief. Rebecca asked Noah to speak. He stood in front of them, the letter in his hand, and told them the story not of a war, or a lost love, or an old man with regrets, but of a quiet hero who had waited a lifetime to finish his sentence. When he finished, Rebecca embraced him. You were his last chapter, she said. Noah shook his head. No, he was mine. Back home, Noah applied to college a month later. He wrote his admissions essay not about grades or sports, but about Harold Eldridge, a smartphone, and the power of listening. He titled it, The Letter I Didn't Write and the One That Changed Everything. He was accepted, early decision, full ride. But the real reward came later, when he started volunteering again, not because he had to, but because he couldn't not. Because every time he sat beside someone older, every time he helped them send a message or open an app or search for a name long forgotten, remembered Harold. And he remembered what it felt like to matter, even if only for a moment. Spring came slowly to St. Louis that year. The days stretched longer, and the air was gentler. But Noah felt like time had split between the boy he was before Harold and the person he was still becoming after him. Every once in a while, he would open the wooden box Harold had given him. He'd read the letter again. Each time, it said something new. Each time, it reached deeper. And then one day, something changed. Noah walked into the community center where he used to volunteer. He hadn't been back since Harold passed. The same receptionist looked up, surprised. You're back, she said with a small smile. We didn't think we'd see you again. I wasn't sure either, he admitted. But I want to start something. She tilted her head. Like what? Noah reached into his backpack and pulled out a piece of paper. On it, written in his messy, hopeful handwriting, were the words, Project Second Chance, a digital literacy program for seniors. They gave him a trial room on Thursday afternoons. At first, only 2 people showed up: a former librarian with arthritis in her hands, and a retired mechanic who thought smartphones were a government trap. But Noah didn't care. He remembered Harold, and he started there. He showed them how to tap, swipe, search. But more than that, he listened to stories about lost sons, childhood sweethearts, favorite baseball games, songs that still brought tears. They came for help with apps, but they stayed because someone looked at them and saw them. Word spread. Within 2 months, the class had grown to 15, then 30, then more. He renamed it the Letter Lounge, inspired by Harold's box, a place where people could come not only to learn, but to connect, to write their first emails, find old friends on social media, or even FaceTime a daughter across the ocean for the first time. And Noah kept a corkboard at the front of the room. People could pin things, their photos, messages, goals. At the very top, always, was a copy of Harold's letter. One afternoon, while cleaning up, Noah noticed a new note pinned beside it. He recognized the handwriting immediately. It was from Rebecca. Noah, I stopped by your class today. You weren't there, but I saw what you've built. Harold would have wept. I miss him every day, but watching you carry him forward like T-Sit makes the missing gentler. You're not just helping people learn to use phones. You're helping them finish sentences they thought life had ended too early. Thank you for giving us all a second chance. Love, Rebecca. That night, Noah couldn't sleep. He lay on his bed, the letter pressed against his chest, the phone in his hand. Not to scroll, not to numb, but to search. Not for distractions, but for roots. He pulled up the messaging app, typed slowly, then hit send. Hey, Dad. Been thinking about you. Can we talk sometime soon? I'd really like to. It had been almost a year since they'd spoken more than 5 minutes without arguing. His father had never really understood Noah's softness, his silences, the way he cared more about stories than sports. But Harold had once said, "Don't let fear make your choices for you." So Noah reached out, and his father replied. Summer arrived with a quiet grace. One July evening, as the sun dipped low over the park near the center, Noah sat on a bench with his father. They were sharing coffee from paper cups, watching the ducks drift across the pond. For a long time, they said nothing. Then his father cleared his throat. "This program you've got," he said. "People talk about it at church. You're doing something real." Noah shrugged. "Just helping people send texts and check the weather." His dad looked over. "No, you're helping them not feel invisible." That made Noah pause. "I didn't get it before," his father added. "Why you were so drawn to this work. But I do now. You always had a gift for seeing people others overlook." Noah felt a lump rise in his throat. He looked away. "You know," his dad continued, "your grandfather Midada died before I could say things I needed to say. That eats at you. That kind of silence. I'm proud of you, son, for not letting that happen between us." Noah blinked hard. "Thanks, Dad." The silence between them wasn't heavy anymore. It was healing. In August, Rebecca called. "I'm moving," she said, "to a smaller place. But before I do, there's something I want to give you." They met at the old willow tree behind the mill. She was thinner now, but her eyes were still full of light. She handed him a small envelope. Inside was a photograph, Harold, sitting under the willow, reading a book aloud to her. The same light in his face that had filled Noah's life now. "I had this printed the day before he passed," she said. "He wanted you to have it. Said it was the moment he felt completely at peace." Noah touched the photo gently. "I'll keep it safe." Rebecca nodded. "I know you will." They stood together in silence for a while, the wind rustling the branches overhead like whispered memories. Back at the letter lounge, Noah decided to start something new. He added a feature to the class, Legacy Messages, a place where participants could write messages or record short videos to send to loved ones 7 after they were gone. Because, Noah told them one day, sometimes we don't get to finish our story in person, but we can still leave it behind. It was slow at first. Some were nervous, others unsure. But one day, a woman named Eleanor came in and recorded a video for her grandson, who lived in Tokyo. She cried halfway through, but she finished it. Her grandson replied with a video of his own. It made her laugh for the first time in months. After that, more followed. Husbands to wives, sisters to sisters, friends to friends. The corkboard filled with ribbons and QR codes and hope. Noah would sometimes sit after hours and scroll through the messages. He never shared them, but he let them remind him. People want to be heard, even at the very end. One night, as he locked up the room, he found something taped to the door. Another letter. This one wasn't signed, but the handwriting was shaky and familiar. "Dear listener, you probably don't remember me. You helped me learn how to email my daughter again. That was 6 months ago." She replied, "We talk every week now. She's coming to visit next month. She hasn't done that in 5 years. I wanted you to know you didn't just teach me how to use a phone. You gave me my daughter back." That's the kind of thing that echoes. Noah stood in the hallway a long time that night. Then he sat down, leaned his head back against the cool wall, and let the tears come quietly. He thought about Harold, about Rebecca, about the letter, the willow tree, the photograph, and about the ordinary moment, just a boy teaching an old man how to swipe on a screen that had turned into something sacred. And he understood something deep. Technology wasn't about speed, or power, or features. It was about bridges. It was about connection. It was about not letting the most important things go unsaid. Years passed quietly, like pages turning in a thick book you couldn't put down. Noah went on to study sociology, then digital communications, always with one foot in the world of stories, the other in connection. Every summer, he returned to St. Louis to run the letter lounge. What started as a Thursday class in a back room became a citywide initiative. Other community centers took notice. He helped build programs across 5 states. The project earned media attention, even a segment on national TV. But Noah didn't care for the spotlight. What mattered were the people who showed up each week, trembling hands holding phones like foreign objects, eyes full of questions, hope, and a touch of fear. And he saw Harold in all of them. In the way they searched for names long buried in memory. In the way they paused before hitting send, as if afraid that reaching out might open something too painful to close again. In the way they lit up when someone answered. When Noah turned 25, he bought an old townhouse near the park where he once sat with his father. He painted it in quiet colors, filled it with books, kept Harold's letterbox on the shelf by the window, where the sun touched it every morning. One Sunday, he received a letter. An actual, handwritten letter, something rare in those days. It was from a girl named Maya. She was 15. Her grandmother, Eleanor, the one who had recorded the message for her grandson, had passed away 6 months earlier. In her will, she'd asked that Noah be thanked. "You gave my grandma her laughter back," Maya wrote. "She smiled like a little girl when she got that video from my cousin. I think it helped her let go." The last line stayed with Noah for days. "You gave her peace. I hope someone gives that to you someday, too." Noah started journaling again. At first, just bits and pieces, thoughts about what he was building, memories of Harold, scraps of overheard conversations that made his chest ache. He didn't think of it as writing a book. But the words kept coming. By the time he was 28, he had filled 3 leather-bound volumes. He titled the first one simply, "Listening to Silence." When a small publisher asked to read it, he hesitated. It wasn't a story meant for shelves. It was meant for moments. But he thought of Harold's voice, thin and clear that last afternoon. "Promise me you won't stay silent." So he sent it in. It was published a year later. Quietly. No fanfare. But somehow, it reached people. Emails flooded in from strangers across the country. "You helped me call my dad. I recorded a message for my daughter after reading your book." She responded, "My mother died last month, but she left me a note in her notes app. She said it was because of something she read in a book called Listening to Silence." Noah read every single message. He printed them out, put them in a box beside Harold's. And he realized this was legacy, not in monuments, not in awards, but in the echoes of a life lived with kindness. One day, while reorganizing old files, Noah found something on his first smartphone, a backup he'd never deleted. Inside was a short video, blurry, the sound faint, but he recognized it instantly. Harold, sitting at the edge of his recliner, looking into the camera. "I'm not good with videos," he said, smiling. "But if you're watching this, Noah, it means I'm not there to say thank you." He paused. His eyes glistened. "You helped me find my way back, not just to Rebecca, but to the boy I was when I loved her the first time. You gave an old man the chance to be brave again." Harold looked down, then back up. "Don't ever doubt what a small act of attention can do. You gave me more than technology. You gave me the last sentence of my life. And it ended the way I always hoped it would." The screen faded. Noah sat in stillness for a long time. Then he whispered, "You gave me my first one." At 31, Noah was invited to speak at a tech conference. He stood on a wide stage in front of screens and executives, coders and CEOs, all people who thought in lines of code and metrics. He said only one thing: "The future of technology is empathy." Then he told them Harold's story. And for the first time in that room full of numbers, someone wept. Later that year, Noah opened the Harold Eldridge Digital Legacy Center, a nonprofit dedicated to helping seniors record their life stories, reconnect with family, and preserve their memories. Volunteers trained in empathy, not just software, helped thousands create messages that would live far beyond them. One man recorded a lullaby for his great-granddaughter. A woman typed her recipe book into a cloud folder so her family could keep cooking with her soul in every bite. Another wrote daily notes to her late husband, saying she felt closest to him when typing into notes, even if he never read them. Noah kept their stories anonymized, but preserved. He dreamed of building a digital library, not of facts, but of feelings. Not knowledge, but meaning. In a quiet moment on a Thursday afternoon, an older man came into the center. He was thin, with calloused hands and sun-weathered skin. "I heard you help people talk to their kids," he said. Noah nodded. "That's the hope." "I haven't spoken to mine in 18 years, the man said. "I wouldn't even know what to say." Noah smiled softly. "We can start with hello." Years later, When Noah himself was old and slowing down, he found himself back at the willow tree behind the mill. Rebecca had long since passed. The town had changed, but the tree remained. He sat beneath it with his laptop, now weathered like him, and opened a file. To whoever finds this, he typed, this isn't a guide, or a how-to, or even advice. It's just a thank you. He told them about Harold, about the search, about the boy who once thought smartphones were distractions and discovered they could be anchors. He typed the last line slowly, tears in his eyes. Sometimes, all a person needs is to be heard once, truly heard, to find their way home. On the day Noah passed, quietly in his sleep at 87, someone found a folder on his desktop. It contained thousands of stories, legacy messages, letters, and video notes sorted by year, name, and date. At the top, in bold, Project Second Chance Archive of Human Hearts. His team uploaded it to a digital memorial site. And every day since, strangers have clicked and listened to stories of love, of regret, of forgiveness, of final words and first tries, and of a boy who once taught an old man how to use a smartphone changed the world by doing it. The end.